Good evening. I now call the January 24th meeting of the Wallingford Swarthmore School Board to order. In opening, as you're willing and able, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I would like to start by asking Ms. Fagor to take the roll call vote, please. Sorry, take the roll call.
Dr. Grandy,
Here.
Mr. Henry,
Here.
Ms. Colbert,
Here.
Mr. Cutis,
Here.
Mrs. Lentz,
Here.
Ms. Vogt,
Here.
Ms. Witset, Ms. Wachowski Smith,
Here.
Ms. Walkman,
Here.
Mr. Berman,
Here.
Dr. Marseille, Mr. Darson,
Here.
Ms. Walkman. There are 8 voting members present.
Thank you. All right, we'll begin this evening with our student representatives report. Ms. Sudarshan?
Throughout the past week, the elementary schools and middle schools all participated in many service activities in honor of Dr. King. Between the middle school's day of service and assemblies at the elementary schools, everyone was involved. The middle schoolers worked on projects and activities, and even painted a mural of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. At NPE, classes discussed his legacy and impact on kids today. The second grade classes at West held their assembly about the life and contributions of Dr. Martin Luther King, teaching the rest of their peers through poems, songs, and even videos. SRS students assembled bags with items for people to celebrate their birthdays, which the Home and School Association delivered to a local food pantry. They also started off each day with a quote from Dr. King on the announcements to think about. These may seem like small steps, but they brought our schools closer together and helped these students make a difference in our community. Over at the high school, we were busy wrapping up our first semester and taking finals all of last week. As we began the new semester, we took a small but important step towards promoting diversity and inclusivity in our classes. As a person with a hard to pronounce name, I would always get my name butchered in front of my entire class. So I worked with Dr. Hilden to come up with alternative ways to deal with roll calls on the first day of school. Teachers handed out note cards to students to get the phonetic spelling of their names, had students fill out surveys, or got them to individually say their names so they wouldn't be butchered. It seems like an insignificant thing, but I can say that for the first time, my name wasn't butchered on the first day. For the first time, I didn't stick out or get laughed at, and neither did any of my classmates. This January, our student body has come together to make a positive impact on those around us. And I know that we will continue to spark positive change together.
Thank you so much for that report. We'll turn to our superintendent's report. Dr. Marseille?
Good evening. Thank you, Mrs. Walkman. I'll keep my my report brief. I want to share, we have 2 focus topics today, and Dr. Hilden and his team will be joining us to talk about some of the wonderful things happening at the high school. We're joined by Dr. Jones, who will give a highlight summary of the meeting that took place on January 6th with regards to Ed Affairs. So we're looking forward to that conversation, but it's high level. We did spend a considerable amount of time, but we thought it was important just to give a little bit more attention to it and give some highlights of that meeting. In addition, I want to say that if you have not had the opportunity to visit our website, especially our COVID dashboard, we have taken your feedback and tried to improve the layout and the information that is on that report. So we do have a little area that speaks to WSSD at a glance, and I see that it is coming up. So I can try to navigate through? I guess not. So we also identified the 14-day count as well. And we continue to, obviously, in the spirit of trying to improve, take your feedback and try to implement those in the way in which many of you have requested you'd like to see that. So like everything else, it is a work in progress. But I want to say this, and I understand that we are back at this point where individuals are communicating with me with respects to our shift, our anticipated shift on February 7th. And the concerns that some of you have, also those who have emailed me with support for moving forward with respects to that as well. And I can see that once again, that this community is just really split in terms of their perspectives. And we shared that we were going to look at our building level data to make decisions about how we were going to move forward. And that we've been using those incident counts to determine the extent in which will we fall below 2%, our threshold that will allow us to move to a mask optional date. I do believe, and it is supported, that we are seeing declines in the trends in the data. And I will communicate by the end of this week our next steps in terms of that, in terms of that process. So please stay tuned as communication will be going out this week. I want to thank all the individuals who participated in our focus group conversations. It's taken some time, but it was great to have you out there sharing your story and sharing your voice and your perspective. We are excited that our students will have an opportunity to share their story and their voices at some of the focus groups. We're looking forward to a February 18th date where we will get a executive summary. And obviously, Dr. Jones and her team will do a full presentation of those findings and begin to think about what our next steps are in terms of implementation. But I would be remiss if I did not speak to and recognize that January is Board Recognition Month. And if you probably, maybe you couldn't say this a couple years ago, I guess, but I think it's safe to say now that it's probably one of the toughest jobs in America. And when you have 4,500 board members across 500 school districts willing to serve their community and find the time to do that because they love their community, want to see it better, and they want to be of service. But to say the least, it's been challenging to be in that seat where you are. I thought I had the toughest job and a thankless one, but I'm happy that every 14 days I do get a salary for that. So some way I'm like, oh, okay. But seriously though, it is been very difficult from my perspective. So I can only imagine in your seat, but your service is deeply appreciated. And what you do for our students and attempt to do our community. It is extremely stressful position as you are engaged in conversation with individuals who really love their community. They're extremely passionate about their community and they love their children, rightfully so. And sometimes you have to filter that passion and drive to get at the root of their concern. And sometimes that's difficult because it's masked with a lot of emotion. But you train yourself to try to do that as best as you can. And at the heart of that is they want what you want. And you try to have to see it that way, what's best for their child, and you want the best for your child. And we come to a mutual understanding that we can agree on that and move forward. So I do want to acknowledge you in the service that you do and the way in which you understand the principles of governance and leadership. Though not on the agenda for a board motion, I would like to add our name on the list of school districts across the Commonwealth who have adopted these core 7 principles of governance and leadership in the way in which we attempt to serve our broader community. So I will be bringing that up. My apologies for not putting on the agenda tonight, but definitely want to do that for board action and reflection that we do adopt this as our principles of governance and leadership, like so many Pennsylvania school boards have done in the past. And then really quickly, I want to bring your attention. It's on our website. The DCIU is offering an opportunity for our parents who are looking for ways in which to think differently around strategies on anxiety with children with autism. It is via Zoom. Those where this resonates with, please go to our website. You're able to click on that form and register for that opportunity coming up on February 16th from 6 to 8 p.m. We'll make some reference to, I know at our section of the board meeting where we talk about policy and we give an update on where we are. I want to share that our next policy meeting is on the 26th and look forward to individuals joining us there for that conversation. I know there's some policies on the agenda for adoption tonight, but as you see our agenda there, we also encourage you to come to our February 2nd Educational Affairs Committee, where we will talk about, and I know it sounds weird that we're not finished with the equity audit and we're about to launch a curriculum audit, but we're also about to launch a communications audit. And we share that those 3 core principles will begin to help us guide the way in which we move towards our strategic plan. So we welcome the community to attend those meetings. And then our next meeting, February 16th, is Facilities and Finance, where we'll provide a facilities update. We will have a robust conversation around building safety and security. I encourage everyone to come to that meeting. And we have Mrs. Figueroa, Mr. Fox, correct, who came to the district. They did a preliminary analysis of our safety protocols and has a preliminary report. Some things that we can do right now that cost $0 in terms of ensuring and enhancing the safety of our staff and our students. And then obviously long-term conversations. We're going to have a technology infrastructure update from the tech department. And of course, we'll have a budget update and some other topics yet to be determined, but we'll share that with you. And then the subsequent policy meeting on the 23rd. So we do encourage you to please come out to those meetings. And that concludes my superintendent report for this evening.
Thanks, Dr. Marseille. Just a few things going on, right?
Yes.
I know that we don't have health and safety plan is not an item for board action, but I wondered if you wouldn't mind. We've received a few questions around ventilation in particular, and I know that it's been a while since we talked about that, but we talked about it extensively before we came back to school, and I wondered if you might be able to share a little bit with the community about our ventilation.
Thank you. And you can recall when almost 2 years ago, when we started addressing COVID in a very serious way, and the conversation about ventilation. I know school districts across the country began to update the ventilation system and the filters that they provide. So I knew this was coming. Thank you for sharing that. I asked Pete Columbi, our director of operations, if he could go to the podium and share a little bit of your history, though it's been short, but work that has been done prior to your arrival and what currently that looks like right now across our buildings with regards to air filtration and our HVAC system?
I got here in about April, and everything that had been done in place was to increase the amount of time that the air conditioning system's been in. They have upgraded the filtration system in all the buildings, and they are changed regularly from MERV 7 to MERV 13s. They are run before school for a couple hours and then after to clear the air out. All of that is still in place and nothing's been changed by that. Occasionally, we have a building where a fan motor or something like that goes, but we also have building automation systems which to let me know and our HVAC technician know when there's a problem. It starts flashing up if the system's down or not working. So we are constantly being made aware of how our systems are being used. So all the work that was done to lead up to when COVID started, before we opened school back up, that I inherited is still in place and working. And we've done nothing to change that except change filters, update and do our preventive maintenance, changing the belts so that everything is running as best we can. Is that good?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I'm recalling too that we had a third-party assessment done.
Yes,
Before
I
we came.
did
back to
see
school.
somewhere where they come in. I've got some numbers. I did not bring those with me, but I do know that they are minimums or better. We are exchanging air in all of the areas at the minimums recommended by ASHRAE and or better than that in most cases.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Appreciate it. Okay, we have two focus topics on the agenda for this evening. Would you like to introduce those, Dr.
Oh, yeah,
Marcy?
please. And I want to thank the high school team for coming this evening, but I know that Dr. Hilton brought the dream team with him tonight. I see the star players coming right behind him. Already MVPs before they even start. So we're really excited about the team that's about to present and the team in the audience. Thank you, high school administration, for being here. Just to share a little bit, and I did give them a very specific timeline, unlike the fact that I don't have a timeline when I talk. But we want to make sure that he gives us a short synopsis about some of the wonderful experience that's taken so far. And I know that if you were given an hour, you would take up the whole entire hour, but you were given 10 minutes. So talk to us a little bit about what's happening, what you're proud of, what you're seeing, what you're thinking, what you're hoping in terms of how the school year's gone so far, from your lens and from the lens of your students and faculty.
So thank you, Dr. Marseille, and thank you, board. It is a pleasure to be here. I'm a little upset you stole my opening line about not going past how long you talk. So
I know you were gonna say it, so I think-
you beat me to it. I was hoping maybe you would relinquish some of your time to us. Right? So last year, when I came in the middle of the pandemic to be a new principal at a high school, I can remember standing in this spot and sharing with everyone, it didn't feel like a typical high school. This year, I'm happy to say I feel much more, and I think you guys would agree, it feels much more like a traditional high school experience. And you can't see behind this mask, but that brings a big smile to my face, as I'm sure it does to a lot of other people as well. So also tonight with us, and they're hiding here in the seats, are the other high school administrators sitting there blocking the view. All right. So tonight, what you're going to see really is two lenses: the adult administrator lens of the high school and the student lens of the high school. And I think, all right, what you're going to pick up on is their lens is much better than ours. All right. We had about 3 weeks to put this together. It took them about 3 days to do what we did in about 3 weeks, and is much better. So, all right, and I'm not even joking, I'm serious. All right. So what I want to start with is, despite the fact that we had a lot of things that didn't go the way they traditionally go last year, we do have some things that we should be proud of that came out of the pandemic. And we really miss being in person for our back to school nights. This is one piece that I really am proud of, that our faculty have put together for our back to school nights this year. Every teacher, for every unique course they teach, made a video that you can go and watch that talks about their class, a little bit about them, and then has a syllabus attached to it. And so that website was active and open the whole first semester. And then this website is for the second semester, as it was noted that we're on a block schedule. So we started, today's our first day. So today's like the first day of school for us. So you can kind of see that energy. And so you can go on here. This will be active Thursday night, I believe, Thursday evening, all right, for the second semester. And so what's nice about this is you can actually see your teacher's face, right? You can learn a little bit about them. And as parents, a lot of times you have more than one child in the building and you have a decision to make about what class to go to, or you're on the 4th floor and then you have to go to the gym and you have to come back to the 3rd floor and you can't quite make it, all right? You can come here and you can look and see. We're hoping to return to in-person next year, but I think this has been a really positive piece of the pandemic. I'm already over time, I know it. All right, so really quickly, a couple of slides. Historically at Strathaven, they go by the 5 A's, right? Athletics, arts, academics, activities, and altruism. And so I basically have 5 slides. They're pictures that represent the different things. 14 National Merit Commended students, all right? We had a new course offered this fall that we've never had before in social justice. I just reviewed their culminating projects that they did in the fall. There's 18 students in there and they're all amazing. And they cover topics from politics to hunger to policing, all different pieces. And I know Ms. Collins, I'm hoping, is able to push that out so other people can see the fine work that these students have done. Our high Q team is back up and running. I believe they're 2-0, right? And I'm already out of breath. And Keystone exams, we just concluded the week prior to final exams, over 700 Keystone exams were administered in the high school. And so then those students went from there to final exams. A lot of testing, Pennsylvania. All right, and activities. We had an activities fair in the fall. Look at the sun. Doesn't that look nice? All right, if it was that warm now, it'd be great. We had homecoming outside in the parking lot. You can see everyone dressed up. It was a little chilly, right? But still well worth it. We had almost the entire school. We had over 900 students attend the homecoming event. Our robotics team is up and running. And then this in the middle is a new event that we had this year. That is it's Powder Puff, but there's another name for it. Haven Bowl, thank you. All right. And then we have 3 students participating in the DCIU Diversity Forum. So they leave here once a month and they join students from all the other high schools in the county to work on diversity, equity, inclusion. And then we had our Young Activist Coalition do a presentation to the faculty. So there's some highlights there. Arts, here's our show in the fall, our band. And then you see what you see here in the middle. Is there a little, yeah, there we go. All right, we had the Delaware County Community College Regional High School Art Exhibition. So some of our student artwork. And in the top left, Mr. McLaughlin's favorite, Jake Kudrick, class of 2024, is the captain of the Duffy Spring Ran, right? So that's him going down Broad Street, right? Pretty cool. So athletics, of course, our football team had a great run this year. Our girls cross country were District 1 champions. And then our cheers in the middle of states and actually nationals that they qualified for. Over the weekend, we didn't have time to get them in because this happened this weekend, but we had our wrestling team do really well in districts. And then Chase Barlow had his 100th victory in wrestling this weekend. So that's quite an accomplishment. And altruism. So the index card with all my numbers is back on my desk, but I'm going to try. Thon, we raised in the fall over $5,400 for a thon. In the spring, we did that through a stall day where students pay their teachers not to teach. So the more they pay, the longer the teachers don't teach. I don't know what that means, if there's a correlation between the amount we raised. I won't get into that. But there's another stall day in the spring. So even if they match what they did in the fall semester, that's quite an impressive amount of money. The can food drive was over 2,000 cans and I believe over $1,300 that they collected for charity through the can food drive. And then the Silvertones made some guest appearances at some local senior homes in the fall. And then some faculty accomplishments. We have 2 retirees, Bruce and Debbie Michaud, Bruce Fosberg. I'm sorry, Landolph, sorry. Bruce is a former principal of mine a long time ago. 28 and a half years for Bruce and 18 and a half years for Debbie, both second career educators. So very long time. Combined, I'm slightly older than that. So that's eye-opening. All right, and we have in the middle, we have our famous crossing guard, Mr. Folk. In the bottom middle here, all right, Coach Clancy, the winningest coach in District 1 football history, 332 wins. All right. And then on the left, and Kai, all right, is going to talk a little bit about Miss Plows, who had an article, co-wrote an article for the New York Learning Network. It's a pretty cool article if you have a chance to look at it. And then some more pictures here. All right, and then this is the best, right? So join Keystones, all right, 700 Keystones. Mr. Falk had to go in and proctor. We had no crossing guard. So we got a special crossing guard, all right? And, you know, I found out through researching that's really not the post office motto, that, but even though it's etched in stone in the New York City post office, it's not really their motto, but we thought that it was appropriate. He did get some compliments, but everyone likes Mr. Falk, right?
Listen, I want to say something. I've been wanting to wear that jacket since I arrived in the district. And the fact that Mr. Falk gave me the opportunity to say, you know what, I'm gonna give you some time to play, I'm absolutely giddy with it, and I'll remember that forever, so. But no one can do it like he can.
No, I must say the hat does look nice on you. All right, so that's the very quick, as fast as I could without running out of breath, adult version, all right? But again, I think you're gonna like the student version better, right? So Kai Link, who is our co-editor-in-chief of the yearbook, right? So you can imagine that job, right? And Noah Sachs, our partner in crime, who does an independent study right now for film and TV, right?
Yeah, video and broadcast.
Video and broadcasting, right? So fun fact, and Kai's probably sick of me saying this, Kai's father taught me in high school, all right? Now, he says it was his first year, all right? But he taught me algebra, even though he's a science teacher. He taught me algebra in high school. So he did something right, right? Kai and Noah are going to talk a little bit about Ms. Plows, who kind of behind the scenes is our faculty focus tonight. And then they put together like a 3.5, 4-minute video that we're going to watch. So turn it over to you all.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. As Dr. Hilton said, I'm Noah. I've been taking video broadcast classes and just video work courses for the past 3 years now.
Hi, I'm Kai. As he said, I'm one of the co-editor-in-chiefs of the Haven Yearbook and the editor-in-chief of the Panther Press.
And the video you're about to see is made from an assortment of footage and photos, yeah, of students from the past year of just what's been going on, as Dr. Hilton has been showing. And as she's also said, we also worked on this for about a few days. And so putting it all together during final exams was a little bit hefty. But the one person who made it like all come together in the end was Ms. Plows, even though she's doing like final projects, grading them, getting final exams done, and then getting ready for a new semester with a new class. So the video and broadcast class hasn't been seen in about a decade. So she had to basically create a curriculum from scratch. And so that's been really incredible watching that grow. And so, of course, she is too modest to be here, but we still want to give her credit for this because where I am personally, I would not be here without the encouragement and support she's given me. This independent study, very independent, very hard, harder than I thought. And the past classes I took with her, you'll see here, it greatly reflects how far it's come because of her.
So as Noah said, Miss Plows is an integral part of our school community, and she has done so much to help us tell our school story. And her dedication to teaching journalism and visual arts was recently recognized by the New York Times. She was part of their inaugural class of the New York Times Teaching Project. And this year, she collaborated with another photography teacher to compile a guide to taking portraits, which was released as part of their New York Times profile contest. So as Haven students, we're lucky. We don't need to read her article to get a taste of her wisdom and her passion for storytelling. We have that with us each and every day. And we are truly so lucky to have her on staff. She has encouraged our yearbook staff to get out there and get the story in our community and document our school life through this crazy year. And she inspires us to look for the story in each and every day. And so as this video will illustrate, there are so many interesting people and amazing stories throughout our community. We have so many opportunities as well, whether it's from our massive marching band to our powerful high Q team or our District 1 champion girls cross country and football teams. Our school has so much to offer, and all of these moments contribute to our school story, which is a story that makes us proud to be Panthers.
I think school pride is showing compassion to everyone around you and always looking out for everyone, and like if anyone ever needs help, being there for everyone in your school, no matter like where they come from or how old they are or anything like that. Just like overall being kind to everyone.
I think school spirit is a sense of it's essentially senseless pride. I think maybe your bathrooms aren't the cleanest, maybe the school pizza doesn't taste the best, but you use it anyway. You finish every last bite of that school pizza. You go out, you get on your school bus, you take out the other sports team. School's pride is less about it's less about the school itself and more about the people you go to the school with.
I think the school pride is our marching band, because like almost all the school goes to the marching band or is in the marching band.
So school pride is sticking up for the people in your school because at some point they've stuck up for you.
So to me, school pride is the connection all of us as students have to each other over bonding over different things in school. So that could be like a test that happened or a thing that happened during the school day, but just the connection you have because of school to other people.
Honestly, the pride of Haven has got to be Mr. Landolph and the Auto Lab curriculum, because I don't know any other high schools that teach kids how to work on cars. It's such a valuable skill, and I just love Mr. Landolph too. Great guy.
School pride is Mr. Steyer. Mr. Steyer by far has the most school pride. He is the sweetest person ever. He says hi to everyone walking the hallway and just makes people excited to be here to learn.
I think school pride is being involved in as much as you can and always lending a helping hand to anyone who needs it.
They're trying to leave already. So that concludes our presentation. And if you have any questions, we're happy to take any questions. See, they're my like security right here.
Well, I just want to say, Dr. Hilden, thank you, but yeah, Noah and Kai, that was awesome. You guys can come back anytime because that's why we are here. It's why we want to be involved and do what we do. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any
Thank
other
you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good job.
Thank you.
All right, next up on our focus topics.
Well, I feel sorry for Dr. Jones.
Agreed.
I sincerely apologize for putting you at the end of that. It's all about the children. I don't know how you can follow up or if you can. So next time I'll think differently about where I put you in the sequence. But I did ask Dr. Jones an opportunity in light of the robust conversation we had about school start time, where we are as a district, the ongoing conversation that is called for. Give us a few minutes of some highlights that were discussed in that meeting and try to help us better understand what does that look like moving forward in terms of our next steps.
So the school start time update, you never want that to follow students, but I do appreciate the fact that it reminds us why we do investigations such as this, because it is about the students. I taught for 15 years at the high school level, so it is always, it's always a wonderful moment for me when I get to do anything related to being around or seeing kids in action. That always feels like home to me, so it was great to see. So what we did at the Educational Affairs Committee meeting in January was we did a full presentation of where we are in the Sleep and School Start Time investigation. That's an investigation that began in May of 2019 and then was interrupted by the pandemic just as we were reaching a point of making a presentation to the school board. That Educational Affairs Committee meeting is held the first Wednesday of every month. I invite everyone to come out. That is the perfect opportunity to hear firsthand what we're working on and also to give input on what we are working on. That is where we will take input, where we're also able to not only hear the input and to hear questions, but to respond to questions, which is different than a legislative meeting. So that's the place to come. It really is the place to come. So I'm going to do a high-level overview. This does not have every slide from Educational Affairs, although you can see that PowerPoint in the webpage area related to our Educational Affairs Committee. So this October, we reignited our look at later school start times. And this is just the sort of brief overview of what we did this fall. 3 final schedules were in place for a presentation to the school board in March of 2020. An important date for many reasons, but it was interrupted. So in order to make sure that those 3 schedules that were our final 3 and best schedules of many, many, many double digits schedules that we attempted to look through, we revetted these in terms of transportation routes and costs. We revetted them in terms of what the school schedule itself would look like and the impact, so your benefits and your challenges of each one. And then we generated 2 additional ideas. One came from Dr. Hilden, who brought in some thinking that he had from another school district. And also, the pandemic did highlight the idea of something called asynchronous learning. And if you've not heard that term, you haven't been paying attention, because in Wallingford-Swarthmore School District, asynchronous education was the talk of the town. So in January, we did a presentation of each one of those. Now, I'm going to start first with our current schedule and say actually a little bit more about this than I did at the Educational Affairs Committee meeting. This can almost be referred to as Idea Zero. I say that because this is what we are doing now. And what we are doing now at the high school specifically is block schedule versus a traditional schedule or quote unquote non-block schedule, which we have students taking courses in 2 semesters. So at the fall break, they stop and they take a new course in the spring. In a non-block model, students would take the course all throughout the year. So you have 4 marking periods instead of 2 marking periods for a longer amount of time. You have all of them over the course of the year, but for shorter amounts of time all day long. That block schedule is a schedule that has been in existence here since I got here. And it occurred at the time that many school districts in our area and in the Tri-County area were changing to block schedule based on research. So it's my understanding that the Wallingford-Swarthmore School District moved to that as well. And there are many benefits to it. There's also challenges, but as you continue to work through a schedule, you iron out some of those challenges. And the reason I'm calling this Idea Zero is because it is also on the table. Just like any new thinking for a later school start time, our current model, our start and end times at the high school, along with block scheduling, is also on the table. I promised the community that I would make that very, very clear in tonight's presentation. Also worth noting is a bus cost. This matters because some of our schedules have fewer buses than others. And so it's important to see the calculations. Each bus, which includes the driver and the lease of the bus, is $65,000 and change. So I'm going to take you through each one of those 5 schedules so that you can see them, and then just sort of end with a recap of what the discussion was at the Educational Affairs Committee meeting. Idea A, what's unique about this is that it pushes the start and end time by 65 minutes. So if you think of The Price is Right and that range finder, you know, where everything just stays the same. It's not one moving by itself, they move in tandem. If you push back lower, then you push back the bottom number as well. So for example, the high school, if it starts at 8:30, now ends at 3:05 with 5th block ending at 4:15. There's benefits and challenges to these. Many of them are quite obvious when you look at them. For example, 4:15 end time is going to impact sports. It's going to impact when students come out of class, but it has some benefits. We hit that 8:30 mark for what research recommends in terms of student health and peak performance for academics. In this model, there are 2 additional buses needed, so you can see that cost there noted at the bottom. There are not many changes at all to the middle school and to the elementary school, so that is also one of the benefits of Idea A. I've placed Idea B and C side by side because they are companion schedules. And I say that because they're only off by 15 minutes, but the philosophy of them is the same. And that is what's called a flip, which in some school districts was investigated to bring in elementary schools early and to bring in the high schools later. To do a flip has its benefits and its challenges, as you can imagine. When elementary school starts at 7:30 or 7:45, one of the challenges is you have our little guys out in the bus stops a little bit earlier, maybe in the dark, depending on your season. But research would say that's when they're at their peak performance. So it does capitalize on that. The high school in Idea B hits 8:15 and in Idea C hits 8:30. In Idea C, you can see that it ends at 4:05. So some of those same challenges for the high school for A are the same for B as well, which would be students pulled out of their last block class continuously if they have athletics, not insurmountable, but it is a consideration. And some of this also can impact VOTEC because when VOTEC starts, the VOTEC school is not aligning itself to us. They serve many school districts. So that is a fixed time when their program begins and ends. You can see there the costs at the bottom for B and C. They're the priciest of the options. And again, that includes the driver. So now I'm going to move into the 2 newest ideas. The first is Idea D. In Idea D, it is capitalizing on asynchronous learning. The way that it works is that the middle school and elementary would stay the same, but for the high school, we hit that 8:30 mark. It's predicated on the idea that some of the student learning would take place in time outside of school. One might argue, well, you would start at 7:30 and they can do asynchronous learning at 7:30, but it doesn't have to be that. Students can choose to do it on a weekend. Students can choose to do it at night so they can sleep later in order to get to school by 8:30. And in this model, our fifth block ends at 3:05. One of the challenges for this idea and idea E, which is the last one I'm going to share with you, is bus ridership at the end of the day. And I'll explain that when I show you idea E. Also worth noting, you can see down the right-hand column, when we talk about minutes, these are the instructional minutes of the day. These are reported to the state. It's important that we hit those instructional minutes for accountability to the state to make sure that we are either meeting the number of days or the number of hours. All right, our last one is idea E. And in this model, it creates, instead of an optional fifth block becomes a mandatory time for students to be in school. They don't go to a class, but they are going to a variety of options, interventions. It could be for help. It could be for meeting with student government. So there's lots of things that could happen during this time. It becomes mandatory. At the same time, Dr. Hilden has talked about there being waivers, those students who take care of younger siblings, those students who have jobs, those students who have obligations or dual enrollment outside of school. So there are waivers in place for that, for those students. For the rest, it would be a mandatory time. This gets us to an 8:30 start for high school. The school day ends for the classes at 2:05. At 2:05 begins fifth block, which goes to 3 o'clock. Now, the downside of this, just like the downside of D, is that 3:05 bus is now dismissal time for the entire high school, but it is also dismissal time for middle school activity bus. So those students would be all together on those buses, which increases ridership, and increased ridership increases the number of buses that you need. So what you do not see up here is that red information at the bottom, which says how many buses are needed and what that cost would be. Because this is such a new idea, and because ridership has really fluctuated with the pandemic, fewer students might be staying after school now than might typically stay after school. It is really hard to pinpoint ridership and therefore buses and therefore costs. So in this model, there is still some thinking and investigation to do. It would also require a change in lunch time. Right now, it's a 45-minute lunch at the high school. It would move to a 30-minute lunch in order for us to maximize the amount of time that students had in class. And that is something that needs to be negotiated with the bargaining unit. So that is idea E. Once presented at the Educational Affairs, the following discussion ensued. There was discussion around the elimination of B, C, and D, with the thinking that we would focus attention and resources into A and E, which seemed to be the most viable based on conversation. Strategic plan also came up. Next year is the strategic planning effort of the Wallingford-Swarthmore School District. This is a massive, very, very important year for us to figure through all of our audit data and to determine our vision, our mission, our goals for all teaching and learning, for all educational programs, for facilities, for finance, for the way that we align our curriculum and all the supports that support that curriculum, instruction, and assessment. That strategic plan should inform investigations. It should inform bell schedules, school schedules, and the like. So the thinking, really interesting discussion around the idea, do we pause a final decision on a sleep and school start time and instead start focusing on gathering more data for idea E, which right now is not fully fleshed out? Do we then look at blending a school start time investigation into the strategic plan process for next year? And then, of course, as a step, we would want to loop back to all of those 41 members of the task force to fill them in and keep them updated on what we are currently looking to do. And then the last was a question about investigation into the current block schedule. This is, has been coined the phrase idea F. However, idea F is really a standalone investigation. School districts that explore whether or not they want a block or a non-block schedule, it is an investigation unto itself. It is about philosophy. It impacts how we do graduation requirements, course offerings, It's prerequisites. It is about our staffing. There's staffing implications to change that. Even the instructional model to move from an 80-minute block or a 60-minute block to a 42-minute block across the whole year changes curriculum. And so all of those concepts, structures, systems would have to be reinvented and explored. It is massive. I've gone through it in other districts. It is a massive investigation. So it is not really something that we would advise subsuming under a sleep study. It really is a study unto itself. If we were to do that, we would pause. Our recommendation would be to pause the sleep study, to do a block versus non-block schedule investigation. And then in that, if it were voted, we want to go, let's say, non-block, then we would go back to, okay, let's talk about a new schedule. Let's then talk about what a later school start time would look like in that new non-block schedule. But doing them in tandem simply is untenable. So this is where we are in terms of our discussion. We're at a pause now. The members of the committee wanted to bring the discussion to the school board meeting. And so at this point, that ends my report. And we're looking for some feedback and information from the board.
Thank you, Ms. Citarelli Jones. Is anyone on the board, any questions or feedback? Jen?
Thanks, Ms. Bachman. Thank you, Dr. Citarelli Jones. This is informative. I have heard this before because I was at that very long educational affairs meeting. I guess I was under the impression, as someone on the board who was present, but also a member of that committee, that we did in fact eliminate B, C, and D. Am I incorrect about that?
I think where we were was that it was brought up to eliminate B, C, and D. I don't believe we moved to, and Dr. Marseille, you'd have to correct me if I'm wrong, but that has to come for a vote to the school board to do that?
That was, that's correct. That was not my understanding. So at the end of the meeting, we were unclear on whether or not the members of that committee had voted to move the recommendation that B, C, and D be eliminated to be presented to the whole entire board.
Okay. I don't know if anyone else who was there wants to weigh in. I was pretty clear that B, C, and D had gone away. And there was conversation around A staying. I think technically there were 3 committee members present, and technically 2 of us were done with A, but someone on the committee, Ms. Vogt, felt very passionate about that, and I have no objection to A and E staying. But I mean, I guess my perspective is that we went to this very long meeting, and I enjoy working at that meeting, and we did do a lot of work. So if there's another way that we need to go about doing that, I think we should definitely, the board should get educated on how we're supposed to officially do that. But I mean, I think it's great.
It wasn't the official. It was administration was not sure with the back and forth, and we walked out not clear what the committee said. Now, it was clear to you. It wasn't clear to me and my team in terms of what are they actually bringing for board vote to this regular business meeting, and we were not sure of that. If this committee is sharing that indeed we had a majority vote that said we're eliminating B, C, and D, and you want to bring that to the whole entire board to vote on, then we can make that motion. That's not what we walked out trying to understand.
Okay, well, I would say, and maybe Ms. Vogt.
Because we have no choice. It doesn't matter. Whatever you guys want to do, we'll go with it.
I am definitely not taking it personally. No worries. Ms. Vogt's here. Unfortunately, Mr. Henry was unwell that night, and Ms. Whitsett this year. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I was under the impression that B, C, and D, for reasons that we spoke about. And again, it's great for the community to hear all 5 options because there really was so much work put into it. And then I think it lends itself to the correct impression that this was not something that was taken lightly. Right. It never has been, and it still isn't. There was a ton of work put into those 5 options, and there was a ton of conversation put into analyzing those 5 options back on the beginning of January, whatever date it was. So, but what's great about making those decisions is it allows us to move forward. And what I don't want to do is stay stagnant with things. We've got so much on our plate as a district. So Ms. Vogt and Ms. Whitsitt, if you remember that differently, if you could weigh in, I think that would be great.
I can weigh in. I remember it like you do, Jen.
Okay.
Or Ms. Lenz. I was under the impression, and I apologize if we weren't clear, because at the end, it did feel unclear. So I can see how one could have walked away with it a little unclear, but I also was under the impression that we eliminated option B, C, and D and decided to move forward with A, and then also potentially E, the more fact finding. And we also discussed folding it, the other things that you said, folding it into the strategic planning process. So that was my understanding.
Okay.
I don't know, Ms. Whitsitt, if you had.
I think what happened, because of the newness of members in the education committee, we might have come off as not being clear on the direction to the administrators to actually say what we were requesting you to do. So I remember that A was put back on to be continued, and E was to be vetted. And B, C, and D were basically eliminated. But in recognition of your work, we as a committee were clear on how to convey our decision.
Okay.
So, and thank you for that. And our team walked away thinking something different, but it's very clear that the members of the Ed Affairs Committee who were present at that meeting unanimously voted to move to the full board the elimination of ideas B, C, and D for this whole board to vote and consider, and a further investigation on options A and D. Okay.
Yes, and I think that when those would be considered was still up for discussion, because we weren't sure whether or not it would be folded into some portion of the strategic plan. So the when is still out there, but the A and E were the ones that we had decided to continue to vet. Dr. Grundy?
Yeah, I mean, I was at that meeting. I'm not on the committee, but I think that the most important takeaway in my mind was like a sequencing issue. That we're about to embark on a very large conversation that could lead to a bunch of conclusions and new directions, and it didn't make sense to start making some final decision about a school start time in the current time period when we're about to start a whole much broader conversation. You bring up at the bottom of that slide, like, it's not a proposal to change the block schedule, but certainly is like we think about broad directions for the district, things might change. And so it would be foolish to make a big decision and start to set into motion changes in our start times right before we go about doing that. So, I think that, for all districts that have had this, and many have had these discussions, once you get to a point of deciding whether you want to move something forward, I think it's a pretty big decision, and the type of thing where typically there's a lot of community engagement and input into that final decision. So anyway, I think like my key takeaway was there's a little bit of like things being out of order right now with making this decision now before we start the strategic planning process.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just, as you said during the presentation, while A and E were the ones that we were interested in, the current state idea zero remains on the table as well, right? Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Kelly. That was my question.
But I'm sorry, I didn't see.
So, go ahead. So with that, since the committee does have the ability to bring a motion for the whole entire board to consider and vote on, Mr. Berman, how do we go about now that, and I apologize for my lack of understanding, but now that the committee has shared that all three were indeed in favor of recommending to the whole entire board for a vote, the elimination of B, C, and D, and further investigation of A, E, and
Zero. I know, it's not a letter. It was getting out of hand with the alphabet.
Zero, how do we go about moving forward with that? Oh, I'm so sorry. How do we go about moving forward with now that I fully understand the process?
So if, I have to say, I'm not sure of what you're looking for at this point. If what you want is for
We
the
want to put it
board
up
to
for a
give
vote
direction,
for the whole entire board.
if you want the board to give direction to the committee as to which, or the administration for which area to explore, yes, we can certainly do that, but it's not on the agenda. So the first step would be that you'd have to vote to add it to the agenda. But I'm seeing shaking heads, so I'm thinking maybe that's not what you're looking for at this point.
I don't know what we're looking
I
for.
guess I'm seeing it as analogous to the decisions that we make in the policy meeting, which is that we tweak certain policies, we discuss things, and I didn't really see this as any different. And I don't think there's anything to govern that. So it would be my sense that we just sort of decided to take a different direction in terms of eliminated a few. And the administration will continue to pursue it with those two options in mind. That's my
So-
understanding.
And that, so if you're making it analogous to what the policy committee does, the policy committee essentially takes the policy from beginning to end before committing it back to the board to say, here is the policy that we've come up with. What we have here is it looks like the committee that's examining this has examined it partway and is either looking for guidance from the board as to where to go from here, or is simply bringing an update back to the board and is going to continue looking at this on their own, in which case there is no motion needed.
I would say, and please feel free to disagree with me, that it is the latter.
All right. Well, in that case, like I said, no motion is needed. It's simply an informational update for the board.
Are there further questions? Okay, very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Okay, moving forward then in our agenda. First, I would like to note, Ms. Figueroa, for the record, that Ms. Wetzel has joined the meeting shortly after we took roll call. Next, in board announcements, I'd like to report that the board met on January 22nd for an information session and also an executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters. Next, that brings us to audience recognition for response to items for action on the agenda. This is the time on the agenda where we give an opportunity for public comment for items on the agenda. We will have time later for those topics that are not on tonight's agenda. And as a reminder, public comment is a time for district residents and taxpayers to speak to the board about an issue that is before the board or may come before the board. It's a time for us to listen and hear perspectives and experiences from our community. And while we can't answer questions at the meeting, there's always an opportunity to follow up after meetings if there is a specific question for the district. Because we want to give as many people as possible that wish to speak a chance to be heard, we will continue to follow our 3-minute time limit. However, to help members of the public that are making a comment, we'll give you a heads up when you have 1 minute left remaining, so you can begin to wrap up your thoughts. And then once we hit the 3-minute time limit, I will ask that you try to finish up your final sentence so that we can move to the next speaker. So with that long introduction, is there anyone who would like to speak tonight about a topic on the agenda this evening? Could
You can go to the microphone
Yeah.
and share so we can hear. Sure.
And if you could just state your name and the street on which you live.
Roberta Riccio, Rutgers Avenue, Swarthmore. My question is this, I forgot the agenda. And I don't think the mitigation, the health and safety mask thing is on the agenda, but there was a discussion about the filtration. And so I just want to get clarification if I should wait till later.
Sure,
to
thank you.
speak.
Yeah, that it is not a voting item on the agenda, and so
Okay.
that would be held until the end.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please. You could again, just state your name and the street on which you live.
Hey, I'm Bill Foster. I live on Strathaven in Swarthmore. Two very brief comments. So regarding public comment, we're still in a pandemic. And so if we could still allow people to call in. So for instance, tonight, there was a couple that really wanted to be here, but they had some COVID in their house and they didn't feel comfortable coming tonight. My second comment is you're going to vote regarding a budget process around Act 1. And even though this is just a small sliver of our economic life, and it can't really move the needle in the ways we would like. I mean, we've been talking and wanting diversity in our community, and I see a lot of voices yearning for more affordable living spaces in our community, which we often don't have. Taxation is part of that. And so over time, there's more and more people in the community whose taxes actually are larger than their mortgage. That's kind of a thing that happens. So something to keep in mind as you think about Act 1 and your budget process. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak about action items on the agenda this evening for action? Okay, seeing none. We will continue then with the minutes. Our next item for action on the agenda is approval of the December 13, 2021 regular business meeting. And do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Vogt. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Grande. Ms. Figueroa, would you please take I'm sorry, do I, any comments or questions? No? Okay, and with that, Ms. Figueroa, will you take a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Grandy,
Aye.
Mr. Henry,
Aye.
Ms. Holbert,
Aye.
Mr. Cutis,
Aye.
Mrs. Lentz,
Aye.
Ms. Vogt,
Aye.
Ms. Witset, Ms. Witkowski Smith,
Aye.
Ms. Walkman.
Aye.
The motion passes 9-0.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have personnel. We have 3 items for action in personnel. Are there any items on the list that anyone on the board would like to separate from the rest? Okay, seeing none. First, in resignations, we have the approval of 3 resignations as listed on the agenda. In appointments, we have the approval of 7 appointments. In certified staff, we have Gianna Jarris, business teacher at the high school, Thomas Gates, special education teacher at SRS, Linda Holohan, chemistry teacher at the high school. In non-certified staff, we have Amanda Jacobson, administrative assistant at the middle school, Donna Tambin, substitute bus driver, Jason Sutherland, substitute bus driver, and Karen Brooks, administrative assistant for nursing district-wide. Next, in leaves of absence, we have the approval of 8 leaves of absence as listed on the agenda. In changes of assignment, we have the approval of 10 changes of assignment as listed on the agenda. Next, we have the approval of payment for unused sick days for Mr. Abbott. In digital literacy, we have the approval of Kelly Kane, teacher at SRS, and Miss Jennifer Turk, teacher at NPE, as literacy curriculum writers for the 2021-2022 school year at a rate of $37 per hour, not to exceed 30 hours as stipulated. All items in this section are as attached or described in the agenda. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Mr. Henry. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kudis. Any discussion on those items? Seeing none, Ms. Vergora, could you please take the roll call vote?
Mr. Henry,
Aye.
Ms. Colbert,
Aye.
Mr. Cutis,
Aye.
Ms. Lentz. Aye. Ms. Vogt. Ms. Witset,
Aye.
Ms. Witkowski Smith,
Aye.
Dr. Grandy,
Aye.
Ms. Walkman.
Aye.
Ms. Walkman, personnel items passed 9-0.
Okay, thank you. Moving along, we have policies for third and final reading. We have 6 policies this evening for third and final reading. Policy 115, career and technical education. Policy 123, concussion management. Policy 201, admission of students. And policy 222, prohibition of tobacco use. Policy 227.1, vaporizers, e-cigarettes, and other. And policy 250, student recruitment. Are there any policies that anyone would like to separate from the rest? Seeing none. Do I have a motion then? So moved. Thank you, Ms. Lentz. Do I have a second? Second. Was that Rachel? Thank you, Ms. Wilbert. Any discussion on the policies this evening? Okay, seeing none then. Ms. Vergora, can you please take a roll call vote?
Ms. Colbert,
Aye.
Mr. Cutis,
Aye.
Ms. Lentz,
Aye.
Ms. Vogt,
Aye.
Ms. Witset,
Aye.
Ms. Witkowski Smith,
Aye.
Dr. Grandy,
Aye.
Mr. Henry,
Aye.
Ms. Walkman.
Aye.
The policies passed 9-0.
Okay, thank you. Next, on student services, we have one item for action in student services, which is a 2020-2021 related services provider contract for one student, as attached and described in the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Witkowski Smith. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Grande. Any discussion?
I'm not sure which is kind of correct for this. The heading says 2021, but in the text, it says it's a 21-22 school year.
I think that was what we looked at.
Yeah. No contract.
Is Dr. Sandberg here? Or? Yeah.
Right. My understanding is it's a 21-22. 21-22, correct. I apologize if I misstated that. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. We have the 2021-2022 related services provider contract for a specific student, which is attached to the agenda. And so do I have a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Witkowski Smith. And do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. Grande, again, any discussion? Okay, Ms. Vergora, could you please take the roll call vote?
Mr. Cutis,
Aye.
Ms. Lentz,
Aye.
Ms. Vogt, Ms. Witset,
Aye.
Ms. Witkowski Smith,
Aye.
Dr. Grandy,
Aye.
Mr. Henry,
Aye.
Ms. Colbert,
Aye.
Ms. Walkman.
Aye.
The motion passes 9-0.
Thank you. Right. Next in finance, we have the approval, we have eight items for approval in finance. Are there any items on this list that anyone on the board would like to separate from the rest?
I don't want to separate any, but I do have some questions or conversation about some of them.
Okay, terrific. All right, First, we have the RICO lease proposal. We have the RICO support hours. We have the 2022-2023 budget opt-out resolution. We have payment, approval of payments to vendors as stipulated from December 8th, 2021 through January 14th, 2021. That's going to be a 2022 change of the years. Financial statements, we have the acknowledgement of receipt of the December 2021 financial statements for funds 10, 32, 51, and 81 as stipulated. We have the approval of budget transfers as stipulated. We have the acknowledgement of receipt of the treasurer's report for December 2021. We have approval of the independent audit report for the 2020-2021 school year. All items in this section are as attached or described in the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Witkowski Smith. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Henry. And discussion, Ms. Lentz?
Yes, I want to, thank you. I wanted to start with is it item C? And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and clarify what we are voting on there.
So this is the budget opt-out resolution. And so the resolution affirms that the district will balance the final budget for the 2022-2023 through a tax increase that is less than or equal to the Act 1 index. The resolution does not set the amount of the tax increase for 2022 or 2023, but rather limits the amount by which taxes may be increased. And for those who may not be aware of what is the Act 1 index, the Act 1 index is the state's measure for determining property tax increases based on wage inflation. Each district's index is calculated separately for each fiscal year. It consists of two parts, a base index and a district adjustment. The statewide base index is an average of two statistics, the percentage changes in wages statewide, or said this differently, how much the residents earn. And the second part of it is the percentage change in employee compensation costs for elementary and secondary schools nationwide. And so as calculated by the Pennsylvania Department of Education, the applicable index for Wallingford Swarthmore in 2022-2023 is 3.4%. Is that?
Yeah,
answer
I
your
think
question?
that's clear. So by us voting for this, we're not voting to increase taxes in this vote at all. We're simply voting that we will not exceed the 3.4%
Act 1 index,
in the
correct.
Act 1 index.
That is correct.
Okay, and so the increase or not, that's something to be decided later. This is just
That is
merely a range we are committing to
We are
stay
committing to
within.
stay
Okay.
at or below that range. That is correct.
That helps, thank you. And also, I do have a question under D, or did anyone else want to? Were we done with C before I move on to D? Okay. On D, I was looking at the line items and I noticed that on December 10th of 21, there are 2 to the nutrition group, which is different than further down, I think, to the nutrition group. And I was just wondering, is that supposed to be 2 items there? It's not, I want to make sure it wasn't a mistake. Maybe it's a catch up. Sorry to spring it on you, Mary. It's the first page under the payment to vendors, and it's about 8, 9 lines down. And so what raised my brow is that on 12/10, there's 2 payments of approximately 115, 119, then 111, and then approximately a month later, there's a payment of 117,000. So I just wanted to make sure that that was.
So that is correct. I'll double check, but that, what we do is we pay by the invoice. So these are 2 invoices being paid about the same time. but they're for 2 different months.
Okay, thank you so much. That's all I have under that section. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Discussion? Okay, with that, do I have I'm sorry, Ms. Vergora, if you could please take the roll call vote.
Ms. Lentz,
Aye.
Ms. Vogt,
Aye.
Ms. Witsett,
Aye.
Ms. Wachowski Smith,
Aye.
Dr. Grandy,
Aye.
Mr. Henry,
Aye.
Ms. Holbert,
Aye.
Mr. Cutis,
Aye.
Ms. Walkman.
Aye.
The finance items passed 9-0.
Okay, thank you. And that brings us then to audience recognition for items that are not on this evening's agenda. And we talked through that, I think, extensively with the opening. Anyone who'd like to speak tonight for items that are not on tonight's agenda? If you saw your hand first, and then your hand, and then can sort of just head up to the podium. And again, if you could just please state your name and the street on which you live.
Can everyone hear me?
Can you try again? Actually,
Okay,
I couldn't tonight.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, okay. Good evening, school board. I'm Robert Cristaldi of Putnam Boulevard in Wallingford. I'm a senior at Strathaven High School. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I'm aware your patience and attention does not come with a lifetime warranty. So thanks for listening. Anyway, I have some comments on the health and safety plan proposed 2 weeks ago. I have some great concerns about the quarantine and isolation guidelines. The administration shrunk the guidelines down to a mere 5 days after testing positive for the coronavirus, unless I'm mistaken, and from what I read. Either way, I'd like to see some more explanation for this. Personally, this is a huge change. I wish the administration had waited until a board meeting to present. I understand it has the authority to change the health and safety plan without a vote, but I still wish they had waited. The director of the CDC, Rochelle Walensky, stated that their new guidelines, which is what we base our stuff on, she said, and I quote, "It really had a lot to do with what we thought people could tolerate." That's not science, that's bureaucratic. I suspect big business was behind the decision. Since we may be mask optional soon, the chance of even allowing a mass COVID positive person into our schools is too great, because studies have shown that 5 days after either stopping symptoms or testing positive is not enough to say they have overcome infection. I strongly encourage the district to require a student or staff member to either wait the full 10 days as before or test negative at the end of day 5, regardless of vaccination status. I've always appreciated when this board and administration have been bold, but we've been too bold and it's not worth it. While I don't support any mitigation measures, this is one I do still support. Keeping a COVID infected person in their house for a few more days can stop dozens from going home, and keeping our schools open and keeping our test to stay program from being overwhelmed. Keeping kids in school without masks is most important, which requires us to stay below the 2% threshold. Anything we can do to make that happen is worth it. Finally, despite my previous comments, I want to thank the administration. As coronavirus cases soared across the county, they stuck to their health and safety plan, and now cases are down 60% compared to where they were 2 weeks ago. And I know in Rose Tree Media, they did a similar plan where they were going to do a 1% threshold, and their board voted it down. So I'm very happy that our administration and board has been very progressive with this. The jury's still out on whether masks will come off in 2 weeks, but I'm pretty sure our case rates are going to be even better now than they were just a few weeks ago. The best thing we can do for our children is to give them the lives they deserve, they so desperately deserve, because they deserve to be maskless because they're children, not the elderly. Thank you to the administration for holding firm, and thank you and good night.
Thank you very much. Next.
Hi, Roberta Riccio, Rutgers Avenue, Swarthmore. And I'm here to read a letter that there were over 100, maybe 130 or so residents for the district signed, including myself. But the authors weren't able to be here. So if you can be a little patient, and it has to do with the unmasking, in the future. And I can totally understand the need or want to not be masked. And I really appreciate this board too and all the work you've done over this time and period. But here we go. Here's the letter. Dear Dr. Marseille and the board, we write to express our concern about the current plans for COVID mitigation and especially the decision to make masking optional on February 7th, 2022. We are all WSSD parents. In addition to being informed by this role as parents, our points here also reflect our additional professional expertise as indicated alongside our names below. Like you all, we are committed to keeping our schools continuously safely open for in-person learning. I think that's really important. In line with the best practices for COVID-19 mitigation plans and in line with the requirements set by the Pennsylvania Department of Education, we advocate for a more layered strategy, one that follows CHOP guidance and CDC guidance in a complete manner. First, masking is key. We advocate for you and the school board to commit to consistent universal masking in all schools. For both CHOP's publicly stated guidance and CDC guidance, universal masking in the schools is among the top recommendations for mitigating risk to COVID in schools. The decision to move away from universal masking should be informed through coordination with state and local officials, and it should depend on the rate of transmission at the community level, not at the level of individual schools. Further, to align with the most up-to-date guidance from CDC, our district needs to update its policies and its messaging to promote higher quality masks. The CDC now clarifies that we should be in masks that offer greater protection in crowded indoor places and if people are not up to date on vaccinations. Schools are crowded indoor places. In the elementary schools, only about 1/2 of our students are vaccinated. In the middle school, this increases to about 2/3, and at the high school to about 3/4 of the population. This leaves a significant number of students unvaccinated. The CDC's updated guidance also suggests that high-quality masks be worn in environments with people with underlying conditions, including cancer, lung disease, including moderate to severe asthma, heart conditions, and overweight and obesity. We have children in our schools with all of these conditions, and they deserve our protection, as do any teachers and staff who also have additional risks.
Ms. Riccio, if you could wrap up our.
Oh, yes, sorry.
timer didn't,
3 minutes, I'm going beyond, sorry. Well,
Understood. We have, I'm sorry, but we do have the 3-minute time limit that we need to apply universally.
okay, so sorry about that. Am I up? Time's up?
We are.
Okay.
How long more do you have to go?
It's a couple of paragraphs, actually, and it's
Yeah.
really about checking
Yeah,
into our ventilation systems and such.
The board didn't receive.
But it's here.
Your
Thank you.
letter.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to offer comments, please? We've got several still. Just state your name and the street on which you live, please.
Good evening, Drew Whalen, Wilder Road in Wallingford. So I have 3 minutes. I'm here to talk about $16.50. That's what I'm talking about tonight. My first minute is going to be just about kind of the procedural history of the $16.50 per capita tax. The second minute is just going to be about kind of my complaints about trying to pay the tax. And my third minute is going to be about recommendations to the school board. So I moved to Wallingford last year, and I never got a bill. I never got a bill for the, I don't recall getting it. But then I guess around October, I got a bill in the mail saying that it was going to be, I owed about $16.50 with a penalty. Okay, that's fine. I'm lazy. I'm a little bit lazy. I'll admit it. I put it in a drawer. And I ended up paying it, and it was mailed to the school board on January 4th. It was just returned to me And it said that the delinquent per capita taxes will be turned over to Burke Homer Associates by the end of February for collection. So they didn't, and they returned the check to me. So now the school board is paying a collection agency when they haven't even turned it over yet. Okay, so they turned it over to the collection agent. They haven't even turned it over to the collection agency yet. I came today to pay, I came to the tax office. I want to take care of it. I don't want something to appear on my credit report. And they said, and I was not able to speak to the supervisor. And the supervisor was very nice. She called me back this evening and said, by law, she said by law, that they cannot collect taxes after the fact. That doesn't make sense to me. The school, so now we're the school board and this village, this township is paying money when I'm willing to pay it. I wanted to pay it. It's so stupid. That's all I want to say. It's $16.50. If it's $25, I'll pay it. But I just don't want it to appear on my credit report, and it hasn't gone to the collection agency. That's what just got me really annoyed, that I came here, I took time out of my lunch hour, I work from home, right now I'm telecommuting, but it's just the bureaucracy is just very frustrating. I'll write a check, I'll give you guys $25, $30, $50, whatever. I love this township, it's great. I moved here from Springfield, just please. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Lauren Heinley. I'm on East Wiltshire Drive. You folks are in a tough position being public servants of we the people. I'd like to believe that you truly have the best interests of our children and the community in mind, but you are factually acting outside of your delegated authority.
Before you continue, with all due respect, is it possible you can move your mask up?
Move it up?
Yes, as you speak, since we have to be masked.
Okay. It's really hard to breathe. I had to breathe it quickly to get through in the 3 minutes. Is it okay? I'm distanced from everybody.
Well, we can't allow that because that would be an explanation for everyone. But
Okay.
unfortunately,
Can you restart the time?
absolutely. I
Okay.
will restart your time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
You are factually acting outside of your delegated authority by practicing medicine, imposing unlawful medical interventions, and by simulating legal process. Our forefathers put together one of the most powerful and amazing documents in our history, the Constitution, which was drafted to protect individual rights. They did this in an effort to make sure that we didn't end up under tyranny again, and yet here we are. I'd bet my life if any of them were alive today, they would be stunned at the overreach by those we elected to be our public servants. We're here to get you back in compliance with the laws. You have not been delegated authority to impose medical interventions upon our children, such as mass testing and vaccinations. We've not granted you the medical power of attorney. You are tasked to provide education to our children, period. You are not, nor are you qualified to impose medical interventions or to practice law, which you are actively doing through the simulation of the legal process. You don't make laws, nor do you have any such law to cite for the actions you've taken, which is the definition of color of law actions. We're not your property or your employees. You work for us. The CDC, the County of Delaware, Township of Nether Providence, and the Wallingford Swarthmore School District are not the state legislature, and they were not and cannot be delegated authority to make law. That rests solely with the Pennsylvania legislature. Article 6, Clause 2, the Supremacy Clause, clearly states this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. And anything in the Constitution or laws or any state to the contrary notwithstanding. Under what legal and lawful promulgated documents are you relying on that grants you the authority to supersede the United States Constitution by forcing our children to wear face coverings or perform contact tracing, PCR testing, or testing of any type to quarantine, isolate, or discriminate? Here are some, but not all, state and federal crimes that I believe you are actively engaged in: official oppression, execution of documents by deception, deceptive and fraudulent business practices, practice in medicine and law without a license, simulation of legal process, harassment, assault, battery, child abuse, deprivation of rights under the color of law, and conspiracy against rights. I'm not a bar member, nor are your attorneys authorized to engage with me outside of a legal a formal legal process. And if I receive anything from your attorneys that is outside of a formal lawsuit, I will bar grieve that attorney, file state criminal complaints against that attorney and invite them to the party as a defendant in the Title 42, Section 1983 lawsuit that will be coming your way if you do not get back in compliance with the law.
You have 1 minute remaining. Sorry, you didn't see the sign.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
I am willing and prepared to file claims against your surety bonds in both your official and individual capacity, which means you will have personal liability and your homes, your bank accounts, and your businesses will be on the line. So I ask, given the potential penalties for these crimes I believe you've committed thus far, at what point will you realize that enough is enough? Decide to not put our district at further risk of litigation, acknowledge that our children are more victimized by the so-called mitigation strategies than they are by the virus itself, and take better steps to ensure right is done by all of our students, not just those living in fear. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next.
I just wanted to announce something that I think was overlooked by Dr. Marseille and our student representative today. Recently,
I'm so sorry.
Your name and your.
Oh,
part of
sorry.
town you're
Sorry.
from.
I'm Rhoda O'Donnell and we live on McGill
Thank you.
Avenue in Swarthmore. We recently had a wrestling coach from the middle school pass away. And this weekend is a tournament that's being held in his memory. And in his words, he's been here for a very long time. And he knew that when the kids of his wrestlers were his wrestlers. So I really do think that we need to do some things to honor him. I'm very happy that our coach Tony is doing that. And I'd like it to be noted that this weekend we are honoring him. Secondly, sorry.
Take your time.
Secondly, I understand the Finance Committee is discussing raising taxes again. Last year, we raised our taxes the largest amount in the whole region. I understand that there were 2 members that are on this board that said it is not worth their time to go line by line through the budget. And I understand Ms. Voet was one of them. There were other people that were willing to sit in the places where you guys are sitting. If you do not have time to review budget when you have $1.7 million in additions and go through line by line, somebody else is willing to do it. Please step down. Also, I noticed that some of our newer members are having trouble attending regularly to the committee meetings. Again, other people stepped up and said that they were willing to do those positions that would be attending regularly. If you cannot attend the committee meetings regularly, please step down and allow somebody who can to do the job. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other persons that would like to offer comments? Thank you.
Hey, I'm Bill Foster. I live on Strathaven Avenue. So regarding the mass optional, that's possibly in our future. So, you know, the county has this great volunteer program where a number of us have signed up for like vaccination centers or to volunteer in an ER. So a week and a half ago, I was volunteering in an ER. And it's true, they're kind of busy there. So every time an ER room cleared and we cleaned it, it was refilled. And so there was some choreography with the ambulance medical transport that I'm not really sure who was doing that, but there was certainly something working there. But over half of the rooms in the ER were COVID positive patients. And so you had to gown up and put on your goggles and double glove. And then when you came out, you had to take all that off. And I felt kind of nervous because I was helping a COVID positive patient eat. And then I got out of all of that. And then I was with a 91-year-old woman who wasn't COVID positive just across the way. And it just adds so much complexity to the ER. It slows things down. And we really need to think about them and what our mask status does to them. You don't see it unless you're there, but there's a lot going on. Now, it's not a pediatrics ER. The patients tend to be older, but they're still important. We should still take care of them. So what we do here has a way of finding its way through the community to others. So we're almost done with this thing, right? I mean, our immune systems are getting exposed to multiple variants. Our T and B cells are learning new tricks. We just need to have a soft landing with this pandemic. Even at the end, even when we're tired, what we do here could make a difference, even just a few more weeks of being careful. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could state your name and the street on which you live, please.
Yes, I'm Jonathan Washington. Any pronoun, Swarthmore Rutledge School parent. I live on Elm Avenue in Swarthmore. I was disappointed to learn in December of the proposed shift to a mask optional policy starting in February. The policy change seems to be based on a CHOP Policy Lab blog post that has since been superseded. They're now recommending better masks in schools. I don't see why the board is pushing a policy counter to this and similar recommendations with no real justification. District policy must be grounded in protecting our children and the community at large. So measures must be taken to limit the spread of COVID in school, since what happens in schools affects the children's families and the larger community, as the gentleman just pointed out. My district child's exposure at school is by far the most likely way for COVID to enter my home, and the same is true of many others in this district. I understand that for vaccinated children, the danger of serious illness and death are even lower than before. However, they are still non-zero. 4 of every 1,000 COVID deaths in a child under 20, 4 of every 1,000 COVID deaths is a child under 20, and infection can cause long-term complications for an even higher proportion. There is also still an increased danger to children with certain medical conditions, like my district child, as well as a very real risk of children bringing COVID home with them to family members who are immunocompromised or not yet able to be vaccinated. Another situation present in my household. On top of all this, according to AAP, children currently account for a much larger share of COVID cases than at any time previously in the pandemic. And according to the district's own numbers, only half of elementary schoolers are protected by vaccination. Wearing masks when around others, for those of us who do so, is not something we consider fun. We're all definitely tired of it, including our kids. But even my rambunctious first grader takes wearing a mask seriously. He understands why it's important and is happy to wear a mask because it's protecting both him and those around him. Having a mask optional policy is like having a peeing section in a pool. When someone chooses not to wear a mask, it adversely affects everyone. If this policy is implemented, we should expect to see outbreaks similar to those that have shut down schools around the country. Per CDC reports, the only way to prevent disruptions in the classrooms is to take precautions against COVID, including universal masking. I agree with the CHOP Policy Lab statement cited by Dr. Marseille in December that there is a time, hopefully very soon, when we can all anticipate not fearing for our and our families' long-term health when we come down with COVID, and when our kids can participate in school and social activities without taking special precautions for their safety. Now is emphatically not that time. With COVID cases still near record highs, with over 1,000 Delco children under 18 getting COVID just last week, emergency departments at hospitals filled to the brim, and members of our household still not eligible for vaccination. COVID still presents a large amount of unacceptable risk, and we should be avoiding it like the actual plague it is. I'd like to ask you to reconsider the plan to shift to a mask-only policy. As the guidance from the cited medical source for the policy has changed back to mask mandatory and better masks, so should yours. Alternatively, if the policy change is seen as necessary for whatever reason, I'd like to suggest it be amended by lowering the number of cases needed for universal masking to go into effect to a threshold deemed safe by medical professionals. Anything short of this is a dereliction of the duty of the board. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any further comments this evening from the audience? Okay. We will continue then with our agenda. Sorry?
Is it possible if I can have, Ms. Sweeney, can you talk a little bit about the 14-day incubation period with respects to if we were to hit a trigger, what would that mean? And when we would get off of that?
So when we looked at moving to mask optional, we looked at the incident rates of 2% because the Department of Health does not close a building until you're at 5%. So we wanted to stay well below an average that we had time to react and to keep our kids safe and in school. The disease process has an incubation period of anywhere to 2 to 14 days. So in order for us to have a valid response, the mask optional would be off the table once we hit 2% for 14 days. Any number between that day and the 14th day will not be applicable to reduce back down. If after the 14th day, we are still over 2%, then we will remain that way. However, if we are able to drop down below 2%, then we would move back to masking.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mask optional. Yes, mask optional. Move back to mask optional. Yes.
Yes, further questions?
Yeah, I just had a quick question, which you may or may not know the answer to right now, and that is fine. Some of our neighbors have been mask optional for a while, some of our neighbor districts. Do we know data in terms of the spread, how rapid the spread, or if it?
They went mask optional much earlier than we would, and we had held off mask optional for several reasons to allow our elementary schools to become better vaccinated. We also wanted the predominance of the flu season to cross over so that we would have time to have reduction of symptoms. Many neighboring school districts who opted for mask optional, as soon as that became a choice, chose to do that immediately. And you were in the height of several different things and with children not being vaccinated. So there was an uptake in many of the districts. Now, whether or not we will see that will remain to be seen. They also went mask optional during a time post-holiday, which is not an ideal time because that is a spike time. Anytime we are off and people are out and about in the community, they are doing different things and they are apt to be with other people who are doing other things. And you can't relate that just to a school transmission. When people talk about school transmission, the PA Department of Health will tell you that unless you do nothing except go from your home to work, if you're an employee here, or you are going as a student from here to home, anytime that there is activity outside of that, it makes it much more difficult for them to call it a linked transmission. It doesn't mean that it's not possible, but it makes it very much more difficult. And anytime there is an upswing in cases, we take that before the Department of Health to look at. So if we had an upswing in cases due to mask optional, and it was in a particular building or a particular area, a classroom, then we would immediately be in contact with the Department of Health to discuss all the cases and decide how to proceed from there with their guidance.
No, I was going to turn to you, Dr.
Yes, I promise, one last question.
No, go ahead.
And I know that we've seen our cases obviously go up. And some of our schools who are a little bit above that 2%.
Correct.
My question is, with that serious number, can you share a little bit about what I think has been a success, as much as we can find success, is our winter season with our athletes? And we have not seen a significant.
We have not seen
increase where we have our wrestlers, we have our basketball players, we have our cheerleaders. who are competing.
Previously in last year during COVID, we had a great deal of cases within athletics. This year, we have had a minimal transmission within athletics. And they are masking on the sidelines, obviously, but for some of the different activities in sports, they're unable to mask until they're well off the sidelines, such as swim team, diving, things like that. And there have been very minimal cases in those episodes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for me?
Thank you very much. Nope. We do have another question. Ms. What's
My apologies.
I just want to find out if you can make it a little clearer with the percentage and the 14-day period. If we go to math optional, is that going to be like a yo-yo, like?
Unfortunately, the 2% was decided per building because it is a reflection of what is going on in the community. If you live in SRS's community, you don't want your numbers based on what's going on in MPE. That is not a reflection of what is going on in your surrounding community. So we wanted to make it, when you say local, that is as local as we can possibly look. And when those numbers uptake to 2%, they would go back to universal masking. That is because of the disease processes incubation. I would like to see it drop below the 2%. And we have not yet decided in pandemic team, which we can discuss, how far below we would like it to go before we make that call. But that is something that we would want, because we don't want to take them off and have be 1.9%, and the next day it jumps up with a case and you have to mask up again. That is not what we're after. But we would like to have a safe number before we have them remove their mask.
So it's still being decided what the.
But if they, because I would not want to tell a school or anybody that if they hit 1.9%, that would only take one case the next day. So you take your mask off and you put it back on. So we need to look at the qualifier there. And that we have not formally delineated yet, but we will.
Okay.
Before we reach, and that will be explained to the community fully, so that we're down to an area that gives us a little bit of wiggle room. Hopefully we keep declining, but we don't want to say, take it on, take it off, take it on, take it off. Nobody wants to live in that world.
So when the announcement comes out, that will be made in a keep it simple, Sam.
Absolutely.
Type.
It'll be, keep it simple. It'll be clear, concise, what the percentage you're looking for to.
And it's based over a 2-week period?
It's the 2% is over a 2-week period. So it is always a rolling number because you can't look at a stagnant 2 weeks. So you'll see our incident rates vary up and down because today would be day 1, or 14 days ago is day 1. Tomorrow, that's another day 1 for that 14-day window. But when we look at the number to go back and say, hey, we need to be below that 2%, we have to look at a 14-day calendar because that is the incubation process of the disease.
So based on the numbers that were put up, the likelihood of the mass optional date of February 7th is.
It all depends on our numbers. CHOP Policy Lab is predicting the incident rate to go down. But again, where Omicron came from and has hit in different levels, peak surges are all over, depending on what locale you're in. It's not a stagnant window to look at. We have to see where we are at that moment in time. And that's why we're not making any decisions until we get much closer to that time frame.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that clear? Any other questions for me?
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. We will move to, at this point, board committee reports, and we've had a lot of board committee meetings. So I will ask first for policy committee. Do we have a policy committee update to share? Ms. Lenz, thank you.
Thank you. We actually have 2 policy committee updates to share. So I'm going to take everybody back to November 23rd. That was a policy committee meeting for us. And, those are not as well attended as some of the other committee meetings. I hope that changes because we really do a lot of work in them, and the conversation is more intimate than it feels here, and you can get a lot done. So November 23rd of 2021, the policy committee convened on that date in order to discuss matters related to meeting protocols, roles, and responsibilities for the committee, as well as to discuss suggested revisions for several policies proposed for subsequent readings and or adoption at upcoming legislative meetings. In attendance were myself, Ms. Kelly Watsman, Ms. Wachowski Smith, and Board President Dr. Grandy, who was still president at that time. Administrators chairing the committee included Dr. Marseille, Dr. Aki Little, and Dr. Sandberg. Various other key administrators and community members were also in attendance. The three policies that were discussed and revised for proposal for a first reading were 003, 005, and 009 relating to functions, organization, and policy development respectively. Policy 003, first adopted in 2001, if revised, would shift from 3 committee meetings to 2 prior to consideration for adopting our policies. Policy 005, first adopted also in 2001, if revised, would allow the board president to appoint board members to chair standing committees. Policy 009, also and from 2001, if revised, would shift from 3 policy readings to 2 in order to adopt, rescind, or revise one of our policies. Policies presented for proposal for a second reading that night included number 115 concerning career and technical education, number 123.1 concussion management procedures, 201 admission of students, 222 prohibition of tobacco, 227 concerning vaporizers, e-cigarettes, and other electronic substance delivery systems, and finally 250 relating to student recruitment. It was a long meeting. Policy 115 concerns guidance for the district students attending Delaware County Technical High Schools specific to child abuse prevention requirements and certifications. Policy 123.1 concerns the district's concussion management procedures for students that are participating in athletics. Policy 201 provides guidance for the admission of students at the elementary levels, and policy 222 talked about the prohibition of tobacco by students for use or sale. Policy 227 concern the prohibition of electronic devices used to inhale nicotine or other controlled substances, also known as vaping. And policy 250 reference the disclosure of student information to recruiters consistent with federal law. Lastly, the policy committee presented about 50 policies that the committee proposes to visit by the end of the school year. In addition to discussion concerning the language contained in specific policies, community input reflected, among other things, desire to be clear with respect to the process of how we adopt and update our policies in general, as well as to allow for broad community input as part of that process. The next policy meeting was held on December 22nd, 2021, and now we have that summary. So what I just read you is more the minutes that were later adopted in our December meeting. Our December meeting was on the 22nd of 2021, and as you saw, our next policy meeting is Wednesday. So the minutes from the December meeting are not officially adopted yet, but I'm going to give you a summary since I have it here, and they'll be officially adopted as minutes on this upcoming Wednesday night. On Wednesday, the 22nd of 2021, the policy committee again met in room B226 at Strathaven Middle School at 7 p.m. In attendance were myself, Ms. Holbert, and Ms. Kelly Wachtman. The administrative chairs were Dr. Little and Dr. Sandberg. The superintendent of schools, Dr. Massey, was also present, as was Dr. Citarelli Jones and Dr. Mazakowski, and the solicitor, Mr. Berman. The minutes from the 23rd policy meeting were approved. Dr. Little presented on and reviewed meeting protocols and background information, including the mission and vision of the district, as well as how they relate to the ongoing development and review of policy in general. Policies reviewed for a third reading were 115, talking about career and technical educational programs. Policy 123.1, relating again to concussion management. Policy 201, again, relating to the admission of students. Policy 222, about the prohibition of tobacco. And policy 227, relating to vaporizers, e-cigarettes, and other electronic substance delivery systems, commonly referred to as vaping. In addition, policy 250, relating to student recruitment practices, was on the agenda and reviewed. All were advanced following revisions and recommended to be presented to the full Board of School Directors for proposed adoption. Policies reviewed for a second reading included 003, about the functions of our board, 005, the organization of our board, and 009, concerning the development of policy. Of note was that the committee agreed that policies 003 and 009 were redundant, and therefore relevant language from policy 009 was included in 003, which was presented to the policy committee for advancement, will be presented on Wednesday. Policy 009 has been recommended for removal due to its redundancy. Policy 005 has been recommended to proceed to a third reading where it can be further reviewed prior to consideration by the full board. Finally, one policy was reviewed for a first reading. It was number 239, talking about international students. Following revisions, it was agreed to proceed to a second reading by the policy committee. The meeting adjourned at 9:30. And the next policy committee meeting will be held in Strathfield Middle School, B226 on Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Again, I would encourage anyone who doesn't find this material to be dry or uninviting to participate because it is interesting and we do get to have really rich conversations about where the school is going. Thank you. That concludes my summaries.
Thank you, Ms. Lentz. I worry that the very complete summary may have scared everybody away, but it is in fact a really good way to understand policy sets what we do as a district. So I echo your encouragement that it is a good meeting to come to. Next, facilities. Mr. Kudis, I think you're giving the facilities report this evening.
Good evening. Both the facilities and the finance committees have met. It's been several months since any updates been provided. Therefore, you're going to have to bear with me tonight. I will make Dr. Hilden and our esteemed superintendent look like amateurs by the time I'm done. So
We have a 3-minute time limit.
oh, that's what I was going to ask. Could Mary give me a 1-minute warning? Thank you. All right, starting with November, with the facilities board, and please, Mr. Klabundi, please correct me if I'm off here, or any of the other board members, please correct me if I misstate. Generally, there's 4 board members that are assigned to the committee. The most recent includes Kevin, myself, Dr. Grande, and who's the 4th member? Rachel. I'm sorry, Rachel. I can't see you down there. Yes, and that all has become the component of the committee since Dr. Grande has no longer been president of the board. He is now on our committee. So I'm starting with November's meeting. There was a presentation on the resurfacing of the tennis courts. We got to look at we got an explanation of the project, and we got to look at the finished project. And we all agreed it was great, and it actually is a bonus for the community. There was discussion about proposed sidewalk project at Cadiz, where individuals from Cadiz come and use the track, and it's a situation where there were steps involved, and the steps were not very safe, especially for Cadiz students. So there was a discussion at the point where Cadiz had offered to do improvements to the sidewalk and actually install ramps to facilitate the use of something other than walking, like an aid to mobility. The funny thing is, by the time I get to January, all this has changed. They've actually backed off somewhat and are not. And I think it has a lot to do with funding. Their funding sources are not what they were back when they originally proposed that they would do it. And they gave a commitment that they would upkeep it too, like shovel the snow and do clearing or whatever was necessary. Since then, they've kind of backed off. We think it's a funding issue. Then there was discussion about preparation for winter precipitation events, and there was talk, and Dr. Marseille made sure that transportation operations and communications were all on board to make the disruptions as minimal as possible. We then got into there's a project, the secure entrance project at the high school has become a somewhat a thorn in the side of the facilities. There was a subcontractor who failed to perform, again citing supply logistics issues. And again, it all carries through from November, actually carries through forever. They were starting to threaten legal action in November. The subcontract has been removed or has been negotiated out of the situation, and the last remaining item is the safety glass that needs to be installed. There's a long lead time for this glass. There's been some deadlines come and gone, and nobody's sure when it actually will be finished, right? There's just waiting on the glass. That's the last punch item, correct? Yeah. Let me move to December. Talked about the secure entrance. Tennis court resurfacing was 100% complete by that point. There was discussions about the Wallingford Elementary School partial roof replacement. It was a situation where it was getting to the point where things were being damaged, that there was collateral problems because the one roof section needed to be replaced. And so we agreed all that was a priority. And next we talked about swim scoreboard replacement. Anybody who has a kid on the swim team understands how bad that scoreboard was. And they were actually pulling parts off of old systems elsewhere in the county or wherever just to try and maintain its operational status. But
Actually, I think there was a piece from my garage that they borrowed.
yeah, they were scavenging everywhere to try and keep that board working. So we all felt that it's time to get a decent replacement up there. Let's see. Oh, Dr. Marseille's pet project, the auditorium lighting and sound system and controls.
Yes.
There was, my understanding is that the technology that's in there is probably from the 60s or 70s, and it was not reliable or adequate for what it's needed for. So there was, again, a discussion about upgrading all that, and it was a, as far as I remember, there was no objections to any of that. Everybody was in favor of it. The marquee signs, locker room renovation, the middle school auditorium sound controls, the marquee signs out on Providence Road on both sides. The middle school and the high school need upgrading. The district was in receipt of some donation money to help with that. So we all thought that it was a worthy project, and it's Dr. Marseille's feeling that with these signs flashing, the traffic will slow down and not be as dangerous to the children and their families who are bringing them to school. So. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, Aqua's main water replacement easement. They were attempting to come through school property with a new water main. There was engineers were involved. There were suggestions that the Aqua try and go along the perimeter of the property rather than through it. This situation was again overcome by the fact that there is a section of the community further down where the water main is going that is objecting to the new installation. So everything's kind of on hold for a little while. Let me see what else. I think that's it for November and December. Now January. These minutes aren't official, but I think it'd be good to share them. Again, subject to the. I might give you finance it. Again, we got the update on the secure entrance at the high school. The malfunctioning swimming scoreboard was actually ordered at that point, and they thought it was another 2 weeks, Mr. Klabunda, before installation. Okay. Okay, awesome. Wallingford Elementary School partial roof replacement. It's awarded, but again, there is a supply system issue involved where the actual installation panels have a exceptionally long lead time now. Originally, it was planned to be done during spring break. It has now been pushed back, hopefully to June, assuming that the panels are deliverable by then. And again, fingers crossed that there's no more supply system issues that would delay that anymore, because my understanding is that roof is leaking, and that's the utility area or yeah, computer room, utility, and there was one other area. Yeah.
Mr. Klabunda, I'm going to encourage you that if you are going to respond, we need you at the microphone because the public won't be able to hear you. Yes.
I'm sorry to do that to you.
Yeah.
We reviewed the proposed window and roof replacements. They're the continuation of them at Swarthmore Rutledge School. We talked about the exterior structural crack repairs and electrical lighting controls integration. We talked about turnstile installation at the playground area at the school. We talked about Kingfield Stadium ADA modifications to facilitate people with disabilities to be able to attend games and have a safe place to watch it from. Talked about asphalt maintenance. Again, we talked about the auditorium lighting and sound controls at the high school. Talked about the marquee signs. There was much more definite plans put together at this point in the January meeting, and they look pretty impressive. Discussions of locker room renovations, or at least going ahead with the design phase for locker room renovations. I believe that's about it. Have I missed anything?
No.
Very comprehensive. We need to make sure that we read these next meeting following the.
The issue last time I tried to read them is I was told that the meetings had not been, or the minutes had not been
Right,
approved,
right.
and they were only draft at the time, so.
Yeah, that was a error on my part. So I apologize.
How many do we have? Do we have more than just December for finance? We do. Oh,
Same month.
oh my.
Kevin?
Ah.
Would you mind?
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Larry. Mike.
Phone, yes, hang on, everybody. Reward at the end of this. All right, so I have the minutes that we had for both November 17th. Please turn it around. Yeah, no, November 17th meeting, finance meeting, and the December 21st finance meeting. So committee members present were Kelly Walkman, Larry Kudis, Matthew Sullivan at the time. Other board members were David Grandy, Jen Lentz, Amy Caruso, and Mary Jo Smith. And Dr. Marseille was also present. The minutes were approved. And at the time, we reviewed a schedule showing the current business office employees, name, position, start date, and responsibilities were shown. We went over the recent turnover in the department and the resulting difficulties in bringing the work to current status. Oh, look at that. Scared them away. Although the department is fully staffed, our payroll specialist has given us her letter of resignation, so this position will need to be replaced. In the interim, we have identified a competent individual who will get us through the next few months on a contractor basis. This is our first meeting where we presented the Forecast 5 data and visuals primarily to show the capabilities of the software. Ms. Martin stated that we will be using Forecast 5 analysis in most of the future Finance Committee meetings. Several slides were presented showing the capability of the software to identify financial trends within the district and financial comparisons to our peer group. Matt Sullivan requested an update to the audit, and Ms. Martin responded, we were waiting for the auditors to complete the work, which they had done. That was the summary of November. December. Committee members present were Rachel Holbert, Larry Kudis, Kevin Henry, and David Grandy. Jen Lentz, Kelly Walkman, and Dr. Marseille were also in attendance. We approved the minutes. And then we had the audit manager, Michael Mood, presented a draft of the 2021 audit report. He highlighted the various parts of the report and reviewed the most relevant data of each part. It was noted there was one additional adjustment required, which was made at the January 24th, 22 meeting. Mary Martin updated the committee on the status of the 22-23 budget preparation cycle. She noticed that we are on track according to the board approved calendar as the packets were distributed to all the schools and department heads on December 6th. They are to be returned to the business office by January 3rd, and a preliminary budget will be prepared and refined. The preliminary results will be shared with the Finance Committee and board in January. Mary Martin stated that no Act 1 exceptions would be claimed towards the 22-23 budget. Finally, we discussed current issues being worked on by the business office. These include securing a replacement vendor for the lockbox services. And secondly, our bus vendor is recommending extending the current lease for 11 buses for another year rather than going to bid. They cautioned us that there is a high likelihood of not having enough buses in time for the September 22 start date due to supply chain delays if we did not extend for another year. Mary Martin stated that she expects to have recommendations for both these items at the January meeting. All right, that's, Madam President, that is November, December. Is that all right for finance?
That is wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr. Henry.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Lentz, I think we have an education update. We do not have an education update tonight. Sorry, Mr. Henry.
Oh, you haven't had enough of my voice.
All right.
I apologize. I don't like hearing myself either, but I will summarize these quickly. And like Ms. Lentz said, I will say for all those watching at home, because the people here already know this, I really do encourage people to come to the committee meetings. The Educational Affairs Committee meetings, we actually, just like the policy meetings, the Finance Committee meetings, discuss things that in detail that we talk about day to day, and then we actually have the opportunity to kind of interact and really dig into the meat of the things. So I really encourage people to attend. And the people that have attended a lot of these meetings, I thank them because it's super helpful. No more editorializing for me. All right, so we had the November 4th Educational Affairs Committee meeting in the middle school. In attendance were Dr. Marseille, Dr. Jones, Dr. Mosikowski, Ms. Fagora, Mr. Abbott. Board members' attendance were Ms. Lentz, Mr. Henry, Ms. Vogt, and Ms. Caruso. Dr. Grande and Ms. Swakowski Smith were also in attendance. We discussed 2 agenda items. Calendar Part 1. The purpose of having a calendar as an agenda item for the Educational Affairs Committee meeting is not only because it is an important topic, but the school district wanted to give an opportunity for everyone to provide input and feedback on the components. Mr. Abbott explained to us how the district calendar has historically been constructed, taking into consideration non-negotiables such as the number of student days and teacher days. Dr. Mozakowski presented trends that emerged while reviewing the calendars and kind of compared us to Delaware, Montgomery, and Bucks counties altogether. She pointed out some noteworthy and unique items that were specifically unique to some of the school district calendars. We started, among the things that we talked about were comments and discussions from the school board members, parents, and members of the community who were in attendance. We talked about starting the school year pre-Labor Day or post-Labor Day. So we had a long discussion about that. Also, the calendar should reflect various religious and/or cultural holidays in the school calendar, identifying semester and marking periods, start and end dates, developing a 2-year calendar, and the need for input from different stakeholders on the components of the calendar. We also talked about federal programs, which is an important component of our school district. Every year, districts receive federal funds to be used as financial assistance to support instruction. These funds are allocated to school district based on a formula that takes demographic data, economically disadvantaged reporting, and school academic performance into consideration. Dr. Mosakowski went over how these funds are used to support academic programs, enhance instructional practices, and strengthen professional development for teachers. Wallingford Swarthmore School District receives Title I money to support math and literary services for students at Nether Providence Elementary. Title II funds are used to support professional development, while Title IV funds are dedicated for improving our instructional resources and practices. All right, that was the November summary. December 2nd, we had another Educational Affairs Committee meeting, which was actually a very spirited committee meeting. In attendance were Dr. Marseille, Dr. Jones, Dr. Mosakowski, and Mr. Abbott. School board committee meeting members in attendance were Ms. Lentz, Mr. Henry, Ms. Vogt, and Dr. Grande, Mrs. Walkman, and Ms. Wiskowski Smith were also in attendance. We had 2 agenda items, calendar part 2 and student services. Mr. Abbott opened the presentation by pointing out the modifications made in the proposed calendars that are different from calendars done in previous years. Some of these changes include, but are not limited to, visual identification of specific days, full days, professional days, built-in snow days, and the June 19th being recognized as a federal holiday. Dr. Marseille acknowledged the request from parents and communities to have a school calendar that is inclusive of religious and cultural holidays. He explained the challenges involved in embedding some of the religious cultural holidays in the school calendar and the multi-layered complexities of making the decision to admit others. He shared policy number 204 that speaks to attendance policy and procedures. One of the reasons for an excused absence is as a result of a religious holiday, and students will not be negatively impacted when their absence is deemed excused when they are absent for religious reasons. The directors of student services presented the Educational Affairs Committee concerning its various initiatives, including but not limited to the special education audit, whose recommendations have yet to be finalized, a comprehensive special education plan due July 2023, and the expansion of the continuum of services offered through the department that include not only special education interventions, but expanded general education supports and comprehensive pre-intervention systems of supports, most notably a high fidelity model of positive behavioral interventions and supports under a model of multi-tiered systems of support. Say that 3 times fast. Also discussed was a 10-year overview of special education enrollment data with a focus on disproportionality and how those patterns of identification for special education will inform and be expanded upon through the upcoming equity and curriculum audits. Thank you. I am finished.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Believe that takes us, we have one other update, I believe, Ms. Witkowski Smith from PSBA liaisons, yes.
Yes, on January 18th, I attended the Pennsylvania School Board Association meeting for school board directors, and their function is to represent schools at in Harrisburg. So I'm sorry, thank you. The legislative update is, maybe I should say that again. PSBA is a Pennsylvania School Board Association that represents school districts in Harrisburg. So their legislative update, Senate Bill 324, is intended to keep students who are either experiencing homelessness or in foster care on track to graduate on time. And that legislation requests schools to appoint a person who will be assigned to help students graduate in a timely manner, that these students. House Bill 2045 is seeking to establish a statewide science of reading early literacy program and professional development for teachers in grades pre-K through 4th. This program will not be mandatory, but is now being sent to the Senate for consideration. House Bill 2148 allows political subdivisions such as school boards that have properly advertised a legal notice in the newspaper and simultaneously on their website to have met legal requirements for proper public notice in the event that a newspaper fails to publish this public notice in a timely manner. So if you did it properly, it still will be considered as a notice. Importantly, though, from the Pennsylvania Board of Educator News, new science standards have been proposed and will be replacing current standards in Pennsylvania Integrated Standards for Science, Environment, Ecology, Technology, and Engineering. Implementation of new standards would become effective on July 1, 2025, allowing a 3-year period for schools to update materials and curriculum. The state PSSA assessments for science and the Keystone exam for biology will be revised to be aligned with the new standards and administered after July 1, 2025. The 2021 state assessment results for updated and the updated Future Ready PA Index will be reported to schools in February. The PDE educator workforce strategy is being developed to address staffing needs, increase educator diversity, streamline the certification process, and strengthen preparation and professional development for teachers. And that, thank you. That's the end of the report.
Thank you so much. I believe that concludes all of our, oh, please, yes, Mr. Cutis.
I am the district's liaison to the Delaware County Intermediate Unit. And I just wanted to throw out there that if anybody has any interest in the Delaware County Technical High Schools, there are virtual open houses available on the DCIU website. Also, there appears to be a movement and plans in place to create a technical unit that will end up doing notebook, Chromebooks, tablet maintenance and repairs in the not too distant future for all schools in the county. They have plans to hire up to 5 certified technicians to be able to do this, and they think they could do it and save the district's money by doing it. So, and it would not have the same type of time delays or backups in getting things looked at and repaired or serviced, to include software issues. So that's in the planning phase right now. They hope to have it up and running by the summer.
Thank you, Mr. Cutis. Any other reports? It's been a busy time. No, thank you. That catches us up. So we will be creating a spreadsheet to make sure that we keep current with giving our reports, and you all don't have to sit here all night long. But thank you. With that, that brings us to old business. Do we have any old business this evening? Great. Do we have any new business this evening? Please say no. We do not. Okay. And with that, thank you. This meeting is adjourned.